I didn't realize I was growing up in a toxic family until I started to feel invisible in my own life. Not invisible in the obvious way where people ignore you completely, but in a quieter way that slowly changes how you see yourself. I was still there, still speaking, still showing up. But something about me stopped mattering the way it used to. There was no dramatic moment where everything broke. No argument. No confrontation. No clear point where I could say things changed. That was what made it so confusing. Everything shifted slowly, almost silently, until I began to question whether anything was actually wrong at all. I remember standing in my bedroom one night, staring at my closet longer than I should have, trying to understand why something felt off. Everything looked normal at first glance. The clothes were neatly arranged. Nothing was missing. Nothing seemed out of place. But the longer I looked, the more unsettled I felt. The clothes didn't feel like something I would choose anymore. The colors felt wrong, and the style didn't feel like me. Even the way everything was arranged seemed unfamiliar. Like someone had been making small decisions in my space without me noticing. I reached out to grab something I used to wear often, but I stopped halfway. It didn't feel like mine anymore. That moment stayed with me. At first, I told myself I was overthinking, that maybe I had simply changed without realizing it. But the feeling didn't go away. It stayed there, quietly growing stronger. Eventually, I had to admit something I didn't want to face. I wasn't changing. I was being replaced. And the person replacing me wasn't a stranger. It was my sister. At first, everything could be explained away. That's how toxic family dynamics survive. They don't show up in obvious ways. They hide inside behavior that looks normal if you don't question it too closely. My sister started taking my clothes more often, but I told myself it was nothing. That's what sisters do, right? They share things. They borrow. They influence each other. But this didn't feel like sharing. She didn't ask, and she didn't return anything. It was like there was an unspoken shift where what belonged to me no longer required permission. I would open my closet and notice something missing, then later see her wearing it as if it had always been hers. When I mentioned it, she brushed it off casually, like it wasn't even worth discussing. My parents reacted the same way. They acted like I was making something small feel bigger than it actually was. That reaction made me hesitate. It made me question whether I was overreacting. Then she changed her appearance. Not similar, but identical. The same haircut, the same color, the same way of styling it every day. People started noticing. They laughed about it, saying we looked like the same person. I laughed too, but it didn't feel funny. It felt uncomfortable in a way I couldn't explain, because it didn't feel like we were becoming similar. It felt like she was becoming me, and I was slowly disappearing. Then it went further. She started copying the way I spoke. My tone, my expressions, even the way I reacted in conversations. I would hear her repeat things I had said before, and people would respond like it was new, like it came from her. That was when the doubt started creeping in. Not about her actions, but about myself. Was I imagining it? Was I just being insecure? That's what growing up in a toxic family does. It teaches you to question your own perception until you stop trusting it completely. If you started feeling like you were losing yourself like this, would you speak up and risk being dismissed? Or stay quiet and figure out what's really happening first? Comment your choice. Then the shift became impossible to ignore. What started as copying turned into something much deeper. It became replacement. My friends started reaching out to her instead of me. At first, it was subtle enough that I could explain it away. Maybe they just happened to text her first. Maybe it didn't mean anything. But over time, it became a pattern I couldn't ignore. Conversations I used to be part of happened without me. Plans were made, and I wasn't included. Sometimes I found out later. Sometimes I didn't find out at all. I remember walking into a room one day and realizing everyone was already there, laughing and talking like something had already started. For a moment, I thought I was just late. But then I understood. I hadn't been invited. And when I stepped into that space, no one reacted. No one paused. No one acknowledged that I wasn't supposed to be there. It was like my presence didn't change anything. Like I didn't belong there anymore, even though it used to be my space. And she was there, standing exactly where I used to stand, talking to people I used to connect with, laughing in the same way, using the same tone, the same energy. And it worked. That was the part I couldn't ignore. It worked better for her. People responded to her more easily. They paid attention in a way that felt natural. That's when the thought became impossible to avoid. What if people didn't just accept her version of me? What if they preferred it? That question stayed with me longer than anything else. Because once it entered my mind, everything started to feel different. Every interaction felt like a comparison I couldn't win. Every conversation felt like something I was already too late to be part of. And slowly, without anyone saying it out loud, I stopped being part of my own life. At some point, I couldn't keep it to myself anymore. The feeling had become too constant to ignore, too heavy to carry alone. It wasn't just a thought anymore. It was something I felt in every interaction. Every moment where I noticed the difference between how people treated her and how they treated me. So I tried to say something. I didn't accuse anyone. I didn't start a fight. I just tried to explain how I felt in the simplest way I could. I said that things felt different. That I felt like I was being pushed out of my own space. Even saying it out loud felt strange. Like I was trying to describe something that didn't fully make sense. For a moment, there was silence. Not the kind of silence that feels supportive, but the kind where people are deciding whether to take you seriously. Then came the response. You're imagining things. It was said so quickly that it felt automatic. Like there was nothing to even consider. I tried again, choosing my words more carefully this time, trying to sound calm, reasonable, not emotional. But it didn't matter. The second response came just as quickly. You're just jealous. That word changed everything. Because once someone labels you that way, nothing you say matters anymore. Your feelings stop being valid. Your experience stops being real. Everything becomes a reflection of insecurity instead of truth. And slowly, I started believing it. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe I was seeing something that wasn't really there. That's what growing up in a toxic family does. It makes you question your own reality until you stop trusting yourself completely. I stopped speaking up after that. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I realized it wouldn't change anything. And the more I stayed silent, the easier it became for everything else to continue without me. The breaking point didn't come the way I expected. There was no argument, no moment where everything finally exploded. It came quietly, just like everything else had. It was a moment that should have been mine, something I had worked toward for a long time. One of the few things I believed still belonged to me. For a brief second, I thought this would be different. That this would be the one space where I still mattered, where I wouldn't feel invisible. But the second I stepped into that moment, I felt it. That same shift I had been trying to ignore for so long. She was already there, standing where I should have been, talking to people I had built connections with, moving through the space like she belonged there more than I did. And no one questioned it. No one hesitated. Everything felt natural to them. I stood there watching it happen, waiting for something inside me to react. I thought I would feel angry. I thought I would feel hurt. But I didn't. I felt nothing. Just emptiness. Like I was watching something that used to be mine but no longer had anything to do with me. That was when it became clear. Not suddenly, but in a quiet, undeniable way. If I stayed, there would be nothing left of me. I had already lost so much without fully realizing it. My place, my voice, my connection to everything around me. And standing there, watching her take the last part of it, I understood something I couldn't ignore anymore. There was nothing left to fight for. So I made a decision. Not out of anger, not out of frustration, but out of clarity. I stopped trying to hold on to something that was already gone. And eventually, I left. Leaving didn't feel like relief. It didn't feel like freedom. It felt quiet, almost empty. Like stepping out of something that had already ended long before I walked away. For a while, I kept thinking about everything I had left behind. Not because I missed it, but because I didn't fully understand it. I kept replaying moments in my head, trying to figure out where things had changed, trying to find a point where I could have done something differently. But no matter how many times I thought about it, the answer never changed. There was nothing I could have done. Months later, I heard something that finally explained everything. It wasn't something anyone told me directly. It wasn't meant for me to hear. But somehow, it reached me anyway. My sister hadn't just copied me without thinking. She had been watching me for years, paying attention to everything. The way I spoke, the way I acted, the way people responded to me. She studied it, piece by piece, until she could recreate it. Not because she wanted to hurt me, but because she didn't know who she was without becoming someone else. And my parents knew that was the part that changed everything. They had seen it happening, and they allowed it. Not because they thought it was right, but because it was easier than dealing with it. Easier than helping her build her own identity. Easier than protecting mine. For a long time, I thought being replaced meant I wasn't enough. But that wasn't the truth. I wasn't replaced because I lacked something. I was replaced because it was convenient. And once I understood that, everything shifted. I stopped looking back. I stopped questioning myself. Because I didn't lose my life. I walked away from a place that never truly saw me. And for the first time, I finally saw myself clearly. So tell me, was walking away the strongest thing I could do? Or should I have fought to take my life back? Drop your opinion below. And if you want more stories like this, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one.